Okay, so you know how it is, right? You're trying to do the right thing for your plants, especially those tricky acid-loving ones like blueberries.
Yeah, they need that specific environment.
Exactly. And you might end up at the garden center, you ask for a bit of advice, maybe, and you walk away just feeling, well, completely bamboozled.
Oh, absolutely. All those brightly colored bottles and bags promising miracles.
And the labels, what do they even mean half the time? It feels like they're designed to confuse you, not help. That's sort of the spot Kesser and Steen found themselves in, and I bet a lot of our listeners can relate to that feeling.
Definitely. It's easy to feel lost in all the marketing hype. You just want straightforward information, but it seems buried under sales talk.
Precisely. So for this deep dive, we really wanted to hone in on the advice Kesser and Steen got from their teacher, Professor Mr. Hendricks.
Ah, yes. He had some interesting perspectives.
He really did. We're going to unpack what he had to say about feeding these acid-loving plants, looking specifically at, the standard chemical fertilizers versus sulfur, and then comparing those to more natural approaches.
Like that acid bokashi soup idea.
Yeah, and composting with things like pine needles, heather, sawdust, the stuff Hendricks was talking about. The goal here isn't just listing options, it's really getting to the why behind them.
Right. Our mission today is basically to cut through that noise. The sales pitches that make you feel kind of dumb for not understanding and the jargon that doesn't actually help.
Because you, listening right now, you probably just want a clear path, right?
Oh, yeah.
How to get healthy blueberries without needing a PhD in chemistry to read a fertilizer bag.
Exactly. We want to empower you to make choices based on real understanding, not just flashy packaging.
Couldn't have said it better. Okay, so let's rewind a bit to that garden center scene. Kesser and Steen, they started asking about soil for blueberries.
Just basic pH stuff initially.
Right. But that led them to think about the whole Canadian sphagnum peat moss situation and, well, the environmental side of things.
Which is a really important point. Sphagnum is great for acidity, no doubt, but thinking about where it comes from and the impact of harvesting it, it adds another layer.
It does make you pause, doesn't it? And that naturally leads to this fork in the road. Do you grab the easy solution in a tube, the chemical stuff?
The quick fix temptation?
Or do you explore these other paths, like using local stuff, pine needles maybe, or adding a bit of sulfur to lower the pH more gradually?
And that's where Professor Hendricks' insights become really valuable, guiding us beyond just the immediate result towards maybe a more sustainable soil-focused approach.
Okay, let's tackle these labels head on, because honestly, trying to decode them feels like a puzzle sometimes. You see Serbunsgedning or maybe rhododendron food.
And you think, great, that's the one.
Yeah, but as Hendricks pointed out, those names, they often tell you basically nothing about the actual contents. It's just a category.
It's marketing shorthand,
Yeah.
designed to make grabbing it off the shelf easy, not to actually inform you about the nutrient profile or anything specific.
But then you might find something like a Svalser ammoniac, that's ammonium sulfate, and if the label actually gives you numbers like 2100 plus, say, 45S, or maybe 1027.
Ah, now you're getting somewhere. Actual data. You can see the nitrogen, the N, and the sulfur, the S. Maybe some P and K in the second example.
Right. But even then, Hendricks cautioned that a lot of the other text on that bag, it can just be sales fluff, not really giving you the practical details.
Exactly. Those NPK numbers, they're just the percentage by weight of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the big three macronutrients. But what form are they in? Are there crucial micronutrients? The label often stays silent on that.
And that chili fertilizer example they talked about really drives this home. NTK 514, okay, in a half-liter bottle, marketed as packed with goodness.
Sounds impressive.
But then you realize only about 10% of that liquid is actual nutrient content. The rest is, well, Hendricks joked it might be the most expensive water north of the Alps.
And then you have to dilute it further.
It really makes you question things, doesn't it? Like, could my own homemade compost actually be giving my plants just as much, or maybe even more, real fertilizing value?
That's a fantastic point. Good compost offers a whole spectrum of nutrients, including those micronutrients. Plus, it adds organic matter, which is gold for soil structure and health. Liquid feeds often don't do that.
And it's frustrating that manufacturers rarely explain how plants actually take up nutrients, on that ionic level.
Yeah, the complex biology of it all.
And trying to get that level of detail from someone working at the garden center, as Hendricks implied, probably not going to happen.
It highlights a gap, doesn't it, between the product marketing and the actual science of plant nutrition.
Yeah.
Plants absorb ions dissolved in soil water, driven by intricate soil life and chemistry. It's complex.
Which brings us smack bang into the need for soil testing. Because without it, as Hendricks put it so perfectly, chucking fertilizers around is just garage chemie.
Garage chemistry? Yeah, basically just random mixing and hoping for the best. You have no real clue what your soil actually needs or already has too much of.
You could be making things worse.
Absolutely. A soil test gives you that baseline pH, nutrient levels, organic matter. It's essential for making smart decisions. Otherwise, you're just guessing.
Okay, so understanding that labels are often rubbish and testing is key. Let's look at Steen's natural mix based on Hendricks' advice. He used composted coniferous stuff, pine needles, sawdust, bark. Why those?
Well, those materials, as they break down, naturally tend to make the soil more acidic, which is just what blueberries and rhododendrons love.
Makes sense. Then he mixed that with coarser compost from deciduous trees like oak or birch. But he said it had to be well decomposed. Why is that so important?
Because fresh, undecomposed stuff,
Yeah.
especially woodier material, can actually lock up nitrogen temporarily while the microbes work hard to break it down.
Stealing nitrogen from the plants.
Potentially, yeah. It's called nitrogen immobilization. Well-rotted compost avoids that problem and releases nutrients nice and slowly.
Gotcha. And he added sand to the mix too.
Yep, for drainage. Blueberries need moisture, for sure, but they absolutely hate sitting in soggy soil. It leads to root rot. Sand just helps keep things open and airy.
Right. Okay, managing pH naturally. Hendricks mentioned elemental sulfur, S, but sparingly. Why the caution?
Elemental sulfur works. It lowers pH as soil microbes convert it to sulfuric acid, but it's slow acting. And if you add too much, you can overshoot and make the soil too acidic, which causes its own problems. Little and often, if needed, is the key.
And he brought up water sources. Rainwater, usually around pH 7, versus tap water, which can be alkaline, maybe pH 8.2 because of lime. Does that small difference really matter?
Over time, yeah, it can.
Yeah.
If you're constantly watering with alkaline tap water, you're gradually raising the soil pH, fighting against your efforts to keep it acidic. Rainwater is generally much better for acid lovers.
Okay, beyond just compost, Hendricks talked about other natural fertilizers. Diluted nettle water.
Yep, a classic. Good source of nitrogen and other bits and pieces. A nice gentle liquid feed.
An extract of pine needle compost.
Similar idea, drawing out nutrients, possibly contributing some acidity too.
An algae extract from the fjord. That sounds interesting.
Very. Great source of trace minerals, micronutrients, and some potassium. Shows the value of using local, natural resources.
But the one that really caught my ear was this acid bokashi soup. Professor Hendricks made it sound quite powerful, very acidic, pH 3 to 4.
Yeah, bokashi liquid is a potent stuff.
And it contains organic acids, some NPK, microbes. It sounds like it could be brilliant for acid-loving plants, lowering pH and feeding them.
That's the potential, yes.
Yeah.
Bokashi is basically fermented organic matter, and the liquid runoff captures a lot of those beneficial compounds and maintains that low pH from the fermentation.
But dilution is key, right? Hendricks was very clear. 1 part bokashi liquid to 100 parts water generally, maybe 1 to 50 in spring.
Absolutely critical. Undiluted, it's way too strong, especially the acidity. It could literally burn the plant roots.
Ouch. Okay. And he suggested using it maybe wetly in the growing season, but watch out if the soil's dry. And the pH can vary a bit.
Yeah, dilution is crucial protection for the roots. Weekly feeding provides a steady, gentle supply. And yes, the exact pH might fluctuate slightly depending on what went into the bokashi bin and how long it fermented.
And here's a great tip from Hendricks. Using bokashi made from food scraps that aren't too salty or oily is apparently really good.
Makes sense, avoiding excess salts.
And if you chucked seaweed or green stuff from the fjord in there, extra trace elements.
That's a brilliant addition. Seaweed is packed with micronutrients.
He even mentioned diluting the bokashi liquid with rainwater that you soaked seaweed in, like double boosting the minerals.
That's taking it to the next level, combining the fermented goodness with the mineral richness of seaweed. It really fits Hendricks' whole philosophy of using diverse, natural inputs to build healthy soil.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit to Professor Hendricks' bigger picture view on all this, because he really stressed that NPK numbers, sulfur doses, pH readings, they're only part of the story.
A really vital point. It's easy to get fixated on the chemistry.
He kept saying, plants are living things. They react to way more than just chemical inputs.
Exactly. Soil isn't just dirt holding a plant up. It's a living ecosystem. Microbes, fungi, they're all part of the plant's health system. Hendricks reminds us of that biological dimension.
And he emphasized really looking at the plants, properly observing them, leaf color, how they're growing, their structure, even the shine on the leaves.
Yeah, the plant tells you so much if you learn to read the signs.
And he mentioned this thing called Brix, measuring the sugar content in the sap. He said that gives you a real insight into the plant's internal health, something pH alone can't show. What does that Brix level tell us?
Brix, essentially measuring dissolved solids, mostly sugars, is an indicator of photosynthetic efficiency. How well the plant is turning sunlight into energy. High Brix often means a healthy, robust plant. Low Brix, even if the soil tests seem okay,
Might mean something's missing.
could be. Maybe micronutrients aren't available. Maybe the soil biology isn't active enough. Maybe those crucial root fungi partnerships, mycorrhiza, aren't established. Brix gives you a deeper look at the plant's internal functioning.
Which really circles back to the value of those natural methods Hendricks talked about, doesn't it? The seaweed water, the bokashi, the living compost.
Because they foster that whole system.
Exactly. He explained how they strengthen the relationship between the plant and the soil, rather than just dumping isolated chemicals on it.
It's about nurturing that complex web of life. These natural things feed the soil microbes, improve structure, provide diverse nutrients in forms plants can actually use, often helped by those microbes. It's a partnership.
Professor Hendricks wrapped up by saying, look, nobody has all the answers, but Kesser and Steen, and by extension, us, the listeners, we can learn so much just by observing, by engaging directly with our plants, not just trusting a label.
That's such empowering advice. It encourages intuition, responsiveness, learning from the garden, not just imposing things on it, developing that gardener's eye.
So, for anyone starting out with blueberries, Hendricks offered some practical first steps. Potting them up initially in rhododendron compost, good low pH base.
Good starting point.
And using a slightly bigger pot than the one they came in. Why that?
Gives the roots room to spread out immediately, reduces transplant shock, lets them settle in without getting root bound straight away.
Okay. Then for the permanent bed, he suggested building up layers on the surface, pine needles, leaves, sawdust, sand, not digging it all in deep.
Yeah, the no-dig or minimal dig approach, layering mimics nature, like a forest floor. Organic matter breaks down on top, enriching the soil gradually.
And it doesn't disturb the soil life.
Exactly. Preserves the soil structure, the fungal networks, the worm channels, all that good stuff. And he mentioned pine wood chips on top.
Yeah, as a mulch.
Great for holding moisture, suppressing weeds, and they break down slowly, adding to the structure and maybe a little acidity over time.
And this was a tough one for me, but he said, first year, pull off any flowers or berries.
Ah, yes, the sacrifice.
Let the plant focus energy on roots and leaves, not fruit. Makes sense, I guess, for long-term strength.
It really does. A strong root system in year 1 means way more berries in year 2 and beyond.
That is,
Pays off.
yeah.
He even mentioned taking cuttings from new shoots then.
Yeah, bonus plants.
Good way to multiply your stock.
And finally, transplanting into that prepared bed, ideally in the fall.
When the soil's still warm, but maybe getting moister, gives the roots time to establish before winter and then really take off in spring, working with the seasons.
Now, Kesser had a really specific question about using heather clippings in compost, showing some real local knowledge there.
That was a great question. Because heather grows in exactly the kind of place blueberries like acidic, often nutrient-poor soil.
And Hendricks basically said, yes, absolutely, use them. They add organic matter, decompose slowly, help keep things acidic without adding tons of nitrogen. Perfect for blueberries.
Precisely. They fit the profile perfectly. Slow decomposition contributes to acidity, low nutrient input, which blueberries prefer. It's ideal material if you can get it.
He also explained why those heathland soils stay acidic, even with less acid rain now. Said they're often sandy, poor soils with low buffering capacity. What's that mean?
Buffering capacity is just the soil's ability to resist changes in pH. Clay soils, soils rich in organic matter or lime, they have high buffering capacity. They resist becoming acidic. Sandy, poor soils don't resist much.
So the acidity from the heather breaking down or just the nature of the soil isn't easily neutralized.
Exactly. They tend to stay acidic more easily.
So bottom line, heather clippings, go for it. Locally adapted, acidic, low nutrient. Just maybe chop up the really big woody stems first.
Yep, helps them break down a bit quicker and stops them matting together too much.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, it really feels like the key things are being skeptical of those fertilizer labels, understanding they're often just marketing.
And not telling you the whole nutrient story.
Right, and really appreciating the value of natural, often local materials, pine needles, heather, that acid bokashi soup idea.
Things that build soil health, not just feed the plant directly.
And maybe the biggest thing from Professor Hendricks, look beyond just the numbers, the pH, the NPK. Observe your plants. Understand that plant-soil relationship is complex and alive.
It's about seeing the whole picture, the ecosystem in your pot or your bed. That empowers you, the listener, to make choices based on understanding, not just instructions on a bottle. The aha moment is knowing why something works.
Absolutely. So as a final thought, maybe take a fresh look at your own garden, your own plants. Really see them. Notice the details, leaf color, soil texture, the smell after rain. Think about that living world under the surface.
That direct engagement, that relationship with the garden is where the deepest understanding comes from, I think. Far more than any label can tell you.
What other connections, what other relationships might be happening in your garden right now that you haven't even considered yet? Something to think about. Okay, so you know how it is, right? You're trying to do the right thing for your plants, especially those tricky acid-loving ones like blueberries.
Yeah, they need that specific environment.
Exactly.